Hello and welcome to Rule of Three's video review for Dragon Age Inquisition, a RPG from BioWare and EA. So this is the third game in the Dragon Age series, and after what is the major disappointment of Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Inquisition is able to get back up to where the series started off with in terms of awesomeness in Dragon Age Origins, but isn't quite able to be the number one, but is a very close second in terms of quality, enjoyment, and crap to do.
This was a surprise. After you return from the bogs, we discovered this man attacking the building with a goat.
The story of Dragon Age Inquisition takes place 10 years after Origins and about a year or two after the events of Dragon Age 2. You play as the Inquisitor, somebody who, due to some fun events at the very beginning of the game, ends up with what is called the Mark, which is able to open and close rifts into the Fade. Then because his job to close a giant hole in the sky into the Fade called the Breach, and sets him off on a fun adventure throughout all of Thedas. And by all of Thedas, I really just mean it mainly just takes place in Ferelden and Orlais, which is nice because we haven't really been able to explore Orlais to the whole, for the most part. Story-wise, if you were disappointed with 2 story, Inquisition story is about amazingly awesome, and like I said, not quite to where Origins is, and I'll explain why I think that soon, but it's definitely a very big step up and brings Dragon Age back up to the quality storytelling and adventure that BioWare is known for. All the companions are really interesting and have decent side quests and storylines. The side quests are a lot more innovative in terms of they're not all fetch quests and have usually decent stories. And the overall story is really good as well. The only downside to the story is, going back to side quests, is while I think they're light years better than Dragon Age 2's and they do connect to the story a little better, there's still a lot of them that are not quite tied into the main story, so you don't understand why you're doing them, as well as kind of the overall exposition on some of them you know, oh, go do this for this person, and then you never really get why or, you know, what happens or the consequences of completing it for most of them. They usually just end up being, oh, here's an item. Here's an item. And that's really the only drawback to the side quests, but in general there's a good variety, and the stories that the ones that are a little bit more involved detail are also really good and tie into the area as well as into the main overall story plots.
Welcome to the Exalted Plains, a place with a long and bloody history. Even now, the region is volatile. This was a front in the Civil War. Now there's rebels called the Freemen of the Dales, recently emerged and adding to the chaos.
Dragon Age Inquisition's gameplay is very similar to Dragon Age 2's more heavy action RPG with some tactical knowledge needed to become really good at the game, although the tactical camera is a lot more useful than it was in 2 because it actually gives you information on enemies, levels, weaknesses, as well as it just being a, you know, overhead makes a big difference when you're trying to position and queue up abilities. So they did a really good job of integrating the tactical camera into this one versus 2. Other than that, you choose an area you want to go to, explore. There's tons of maps that are huge in comparison to anything Dragon Age 2 or even Dragon Age 1 had. With tons of things to do, tons of areas to explore, secrets, and all that good stuff. You can do side quests ranging from closing rifts to collecting shards that give you stuff later on or helping people out. Other than that, gameplay is also broken into companions. Companion AI is pretty stupid most of the time, especially with tanking characters. Not really. And the other downside to this one versus some of the others is your options for setting up how your companion AI works has been dumbed down to be pretty much useless, which is kind of a bummer. But overall, the AI is okay in most situations. You can unlock story quests by talking to them in Freehold, getting their, you know, your approval rating up with different characters. Obviously, affects if they stay with you, give you side quests, or, you know, just leave you at the dry and leave the Inquisition forever. You also, while in the main hold, can do judgments, which people get sent to you, and you decide whether they live or die or whatever happens to them. Some of them are a little bit more serious in terms of story. Other ones are pretty silly, and while still have an effect on what happens in the game, tend to be kind of silly. If you watch the earlier cutscene, that is one of the more silly ones. Other than that, you level up, spend talent points in different trees to gain more abilities and up your stats. They did get rid of you putting your stats into things. Instead, it automatically does it when you level, as well as the ability is actually giving you stats. So if you wanna get the best, you wanna try to figure out what stats you want on a character and get those abilities if it has it. Crafting is a huge part of this game versus other Dragon Ages, which is good. It's fairly in-depth. You can do a lot of stuff with the crafting system, make some really, really good armors and weapons. The only downside is gathering the materials is kind of boring and takes forever in most cases. You also get what are called Inquisition perks, which is another form of leveling. You spend those on your advisors who give you new abilities, such as increased radar, distance, able to pick more, the harder difficulty locks, gaining more inventory space, stuff like that. It's actually a really cool system. The war board is the other cool thing in this game. Basically, you have a map of the world, and you send out your advisors to go complete tasks, ranging from, gaining money to go and assassinating people or helping different nobles get elected to different offices. It's a really cool board. Depending on what you do, depends on the outcome of that quest, which could chain into another war board quest or end it, depending on what you did, and depending on what you do also gives you different influence, and it's really cool. It's by far one of the best parts of Dragon Age Inquisition. It's just picking out the different spots on the board and sending people and hoping you get the best rewards, as well as it also talks about different people from the past games, like the hero Ferelden, for example, from Dragon Age Origins, and a couple other people come into play on that as well. It's a really cool thing, and I hope it carries over and they do something similar to that in the next Dragon Age, which there will be one, most likely. Other gameplay aspects are, let's see, I think that's really it. I mean, there's some other minor ones, like mounts are in this one, which are pretty cool, get you around the map a lot faster. You want to get around the map a lot faster. And it's generally just a really fun game, and definitely a step up from Dragon Age 2 in every aspect, and is a lot of fun to play.
Keep off the ramparts.
Dragon Age Inquisition is a big step up from Dragon Age 2 and brings Dragon Age back into the limelight. EA has also regained some of my trust back from this one because it wasn't crap or buggy, other than a few minor bugs I ran into. But in general, ran perfectly fine, and the game was actually really, really good. Dragon Age Inquisition, I'm giving a buy rating. And that's it for this review. Next up should be Far Cry 4 or Super Smash Bros. As soon as I get home from vacation. Lizzie Nano was kind enough to let me borrow a PS4 and some recording stuff to do this one, which is why the sound quality is not quite as good, because we couldn't get the good mic working that they own on the PS4. So sorry about the sound quality, but hopefully Far Cry and the Smash will be up by the end of the weekend. I'm going to try to power those out as much as possible. Thanks for listening, everybody, and always remember to trust in the rule of 3.